Okay, lesson 6.3 is all about proving that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram. And our objective is to determine whether the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So to do that, we have 4 new theorems to talk about. The first one is 6.5. It says if the diagonals of a quadrilateral bisect each other, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Remember, bisect means cut in half. So that means that both halves are exactly the same. Theorem 6.6 says if one pair of opposite sides of a quadrilateral is both congruent and parallel, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Since both the sides are congruent and they're parallel, that means the other 2 sides that connect them are also congruent and parallel, which makes it a parallelogram. Then theorem 6.7, if both pairs of opposite sides of a quadrilateral are congruent, then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. And finally, theorem 6.8 says that if both pairs of opposite angles of a quadrilateral are congruent, then that quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So we are going to start applying these 4 theorems to figure out if we have a parallelogram. First one, finding the values of a parallelogram. So we are going to solve for x and y in quadrilateral ABCD. If the diagonals of a quadrilateral bisect each other, then ABCD is a parallelogram by, that would be theorem 6.5, that talks about bisecting. Okay, so write and solve the equations for x and y. So the diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other, so they should be equal. So here we have 10x minus 24, which is this half, is equal to 8x plus 12. Then on this side, we're going to have 2y minus 80 from over here equal to y plus 9. Okay, and we're just going to use algebra to solve these. So collect the variables on one side, so I'm going to subtract the 8x from the 10x, and I get 2x. Over here, I'm going to subtract the 1y from the 2y and get y. Then if I solve, I add 24 to the other side. 12 plus 24 would be 36. Over here, if I add 80 to the other side, I would have 89. So that one's done. Y equals 89. Okay, over here I have 2x equals 36, and I need to divide 36 by 2, and I get 18. So x equals 18, y equals 89. Example 2. Is the quadrilateral a parallelogram? Determine whether each is a parallelogram. So, part A, it says, all you know about the quadrilateral is that only one pair of opposite sides is congruent. Would be this side here. We know these 2 are congruent. That's all we know. Therefore, you cannot conclude the parallelogram or the quadrilateral is a parallelogram, because if we only know one pair of opposite sides is congruent, we also need to know that they're parallel. Okay, part B, the sum of the measures of the angles in a polygon is n minus 2 times 180, where n represents the number of sides, and we talked about this in an earlier chapter last semester. So the sum of the measures of the angles in a quadrilateral has 4 sides. It's 4 minus 2 times 180. 4 minus 2 is 2 times 180, which is 360 degrees. Okay, so if we add all of these up, and then they use x for this angle, we can figure out what x is. So x plus 75 plus 105 plus 75 has to equal 360. If we subtract, x is left with 105 degrees. So these are the same opposite angles. And theorem 6.8 says if both pairs of opposite angles are congruent, which we have, right? 105 and 105, and then we've got 75 and 75. Then the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Okay. Because both opposite pairs of angles are, or both pairs of opposite angles are congruent, the quadrilateral is a parallelogram by theorem 6.8. This one doesn't have a name, it just has a number, 6.8. Okay. There are a few check for understanding problems to try. 3 total. Number 2 has part A and part B. So find the values of A and C for which PQR must be a parallelogram. So if this is a parallelogram, we know that 3C minus 3 equals C plus 1. And we know that 2 consecutive angles are supplementary. So those are going to add up to 180. So that should help you. Number 2, look through the theorems and decide if you have enough information from figure A to decide that that's a parallelogram or not. And then the same thing with part B. Okay, go ahead and try those out. And there will be a video over the check for understanding problems for you to watch to make sure you understood what you were doing.